The TeraFlex 2-inch performance spacer lift for the KL Cherokee lifts your vehicle to provide increased clearance for off-road driving and will allow room for slightly larger tires. The kit includes all the necessary hardware and can be installed easily in your garage. Start by lifting the vehicle off the ground. If you are not on a hoist, be sure to support the vehicle at the lift points after jacking it up. Remove the wheels. Detach the speed sensor and brake line from the brackets connecting it to the shock. Remove the strut to knuckle retaining bolt. Take the two halves of the spacer. The front will have the TeraFlex logo on it. The bolt holes on these parts aren't exactly centered, so if you have them the wrong way, they will sit offset. Push down on the knuckle assembly. If you have a pry bar, that will make it easier to do, especially if you are doing it by yourself. Set the back of the spacer into place. This will hold the knuckle down so you can install the front of the spacer. Install the brake and speed sensor brackets onto the bolt before putting on the nut. Final tighten the hardware for side 1 first. Make sure it is torqued before you tighten anything on side 2. On the back of the strut is a tab that will need to be bent out of the way. Use locking pliers and it should move pretty easily. Push up on the bottom of the knuckle to ensure it's seated firmly against the spacer. Install the provided hardware and clamp the knuckle to the strut. Reconnect the brake line and speed sensor cable to the new brackets. Check the tension on the brake line by turning the assembly all the way to the right and then to the left. Some trims and model years have slightly different setup, which means that they may need to use the factory line mounts, in which case you could remove the new brackets. In the rear, disconnect the sway bar from the lower control arm. Support the control arm and disconnect the lower end of the shock. Disconnect the control arm from the knuckle. Remove the support and the spring should come out easily. The spring spacer attaches to the bottom of the spring. Note the alignment tabs on both the spring and the spring spacer. Install the spring spacer, orienting it so that the alignment tab goes into the opening on the control arm. Reinstall the spring. Make sure the alignment tab is in the opening on the spacer and that the spring is seated properly. Support the control arm and push it back up into position. The bearing in the knuckle can be rotated to fit into the control arm. Reinstall the hardware and tighten to the factory specifications. To install the shock bracket, remove the rearmost trailing arm bolt. Connect the bracket to the shock first using the provided hardware. The threaded end should be pointing towards the center of the vehicle. Use the provided hardware to attach the bracket to the knuckle and the trailing arm. A spacer is also provided for the end of the bracket that attaches to the trailing arm. After you've completed installing the other side, reattach the sway bar.